thank you, Wasim bhai, for taking the time and coming. And I know it's like a Thursday and traffic is insane. So it's hard to move, especially at this hour, যখন সব অফিসে ছুটি হচ্ছে and stuff like that. So thank you for making the time and coming.
No, thanks for hosting me. Actually, I did not realize that it's hard to move at this hour because I usually don't move at this hour.
True.
Yeah. So thank you so much. So Signals is something we have just started. So it's very experimental. So আমাদের নিজেদের মধ্যে ডিবেট হচ্ছিল যে আসলে আমরা কি করার চেষ্টা করতেছি. Is this a podcast? Is this an interview? What is it? And we decided যে এত ফর্মাল হওয়ার দরকার নাই. It's simply a platform, একটা অজুহাত for us to come together and have a chat. আড্ডার মতন হবে. And hopefully from the conversation, the audience can learn something about how Chaldal is doing, about the larger startup industry. So we'll talk a lot about mostly startup stuff, I think. So hopefully we'll learn something. The audience will also learn something. So it could be informal. And as you can see, we're shooting with 3 iPhones. There's no professional camera crew involved. So we just wanted to take it very casual approach and just have fun with it.
Yeah. Okay, let's try.
So I think for people who don't know, obviously, Wasim bhai is the CEO and founder of Chaldal. And it's, I would say, when we think about startups in Bangladesh, one of the earliest and one of the most prominent startups in Bangladesh is Chaldal, right? And we always hear examples and like before we started, we used to hear about Chaldal and Wasim bhai and all this thing that we're doing. And it is I'm pretty sure if you take a consensus of a lot of founders, you will see Wasim bhai as an inspiration to a lot.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's like especially before like going into this. And it's not an easy story to tell because I know Jay, his background is obviously you've graduated from, I think, Wharton Business School, right?
Yeah.
And you got into a job in Silicon Valley, probably at a startup.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong. And then you decided, Jacha, I want to come back to Bangladesh and start something
and
here.
That's such a bold leap because back in 2013, how many startups were there? So probably the ecosystem wasn't there. The regulations কিরকম থাকবে না থাকবে, কতটুকু supportive হবে ecosystem. There were so many unknown variables and yet you decided to take that leap. So we would really want to know like what inspired you
so
to do that.
I don't think it's such a bold leap actually. It's absolutely a logical move. So, you have like the Maslow's pyramid, which is generalized, but that's how the human mind works. When I started this startup, I had some savings, I had a reasonably stable family. Just working at a job did not make any sense, right? Like, if you, like, the question is, you look at your life at the age of, I don't know, 60 or something like that, and you ask, what are you going to do? I don't think like, I would have been particularly proud of the path that I was on. And having started this, I can say that, I mean, even today, I'd have no regrets about starting Chaldal. So it was an absolutely logical move. মানুষজন মনে করে যে অনেক courage দরকার আসলে. But I think it's not courage. I think you just need to think it through. Because, the sort of things that we have witnessed is not something that you would see in a regular life, right? The sort of interactions that you have, it's way above and beyond. It's like আমি কি daily I have like bhat dal, or on some days I'll have some sushi and some days I'll have some kachi biryani. So if you have a startup, you have the likelihood that you will have those sort of extreme experiences increases. So it makes your life more interesting. And what do you have to lose? You don't really have to lose that much, right? Like I don't think যে সকালবেলায় nasta kora, like I sort of think that Allah has been very kind enough to give me that support that okay, you don't have to worry about that for the next 5 years unless there is a war in Bangladesh or something like that, right? So it's not really a bold move. I think it's a very practical move.
I think এখন বসে হাইন্ডসাইটে মনে হয় যে হ্যাঁ it's
No-brainer.
it's a
no,
no-brainer, right? It's evident. It's like you create an online grocery store in such a densely populated city like Bangladesh. But I'm sure it was different in 2013. There was like nothing comparable. You're coming and you're building something here. You don't even know what the fundraising situation would be. Locally, there was no precedence there and stuff.
I also think that that's also, when I tried to explain it to a lot of people, but it was very evident that something in e-commerce would work out in Bangladesh. If you look at every country larger than Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, e-commerce was already working. Saying that e-commerce won't work in Bangladesh is like saying electricity won't work in Bangladesh, right? It's as obvious as that. But to Bangladeshis, it sounded like বাসায় গিয়ে delivery দিবে, বাজারে মানুষ যাবে না। That sounded a bit weird. আমি তো quality মাছ টিপে টিপে দেখতে চাই। The reason why মানুষজন মাছ টিপে টিপে দেখতে চায় is because they have plenty of time in their lives. And with the advent of the modern world, which was very evident at that point, YouTube আছে, you like to spend more time online. Traffic gets grows faster than infrastructure, so you will be wasting more time traveling. So these sort of things I thought was very obvious at that point. What was difficult is to convince people. The problem is that with building something like Chaldal, it's a major investment. It's not like যে আমি গিয়ে কালকে ডিসাইড করলাম যে আমি একটা I don't know ফটোগ্রাফি স্টুডিও দিব, আমি একটা ক্যামেরা কিনলাম, ফ্রেন্ডদেরকে বললাম, বিয়েতে গিয়ে ছবি তুললাম, ইনকাম আসা শুরু করলো. It's not like that. It's a major infrastructure. It's like more comparable to, let's say, building a power plant where you have to keep on investing and figuring out the processes, and then it starts generating revenue after you have made that necessary investment. So that I thought would be a bit easier than it was. কারণ বাংলাদেশের ওই ইনভেস্টমেন্ট ইকোসিস্টেমটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি grow করে নাই, and we are forever dependent on foreign investments, right? Like even for ShopUp, etc. Like we have a very high dependence on foreign investment. So that was the only thing that did not really match my calculation. But otherwise, I think everything else sort of was as per our expectations, if you will. So yeah.
Right. So I think talking about the start of your journey, right? I don't know the story of the Y Combinator and everything, because I would love to know the story of how it started. To give you some context, right? Like, for example, when we started our fundraising journey, 2017, 18, 19, we realized quickly, and I've spoken about this before, Jehan, you have to sell Bangladesh first, right? You have to sell the story of Bangladesh, the growth story of Bangladesh, and then people get to, especially for the foreign investors, then they understand, this is a country that has potential and we can invest in it. But tokhoni it was difficult. It was difficult selling the story because most of them have not heard about it. The other mandate thake na. Their mandate either is Southeast Asia or it stops at India. Ei choto deshtar kono thake na and stuff like that. But in 2013, you got into the Y Combinator Accelerator program.
We got into it 2015,
Okay,
but
right.
Again,
so yeah, and I would love to know the journey, right? Like, how did you, what was the pitch? How did you get them to understand about your business?
So actually, what most people don't realize is that we interviewed twice for Y Combinator.
All right.
First time we interviewed was like, I'm going to just start করে December 2013 গিয়ে আমরা interview করছি. And we interviewed the Paul Graham, Jessica, Trevor, I think Kevin. It was a 6-person, ekdom partner,
So
legendary partners. Paul Buhite.
Pretty intimidated.
I was not intimidated because we did not know who they were. We only knew Paul Graham. আমার সামনে Paul Buhite 10 মিনিট বসেছিল, and this guy created Gmail. I did not know. I'm like, who is this weird guy? Like, কি জিজ্ঞেস করবে না. So the thing was that our knowledge base was very low about these things. আমরা জাস্ট জানতাম যে ওয়াই কমিউনিটির একটা ভালো জিনিস, আমাদের একটা ফ্রেন্ড ওয়াই কমিউনিটিতে গেছে। সো আমরা যখন অ্যাপ্লিকেশন করি, we did a late application and Paul Graham himself saw the application and called us. সো গিয়ে বললাম, that's a good sign. তারপরে Paul Graham 20 মিনিট ইন্টারভিউ করার পরে সন্ধ্যার সময় ইমেল আসলো, দেখো, like, we think that this is a great opportunity, and but we are not yet sure that you're the right team to do it. And right now it feels like you should really be focusing in Bangladesh. So moving to California would not be correct. So that was the rejection email. So ওইটা রিজেকশন ইমেল পেয়ে এখন like we went back and we were like আচ্ছা ফান্ডিং তো আর পাবো না. That was our, we had one funding plan which was that we raised money from Y Combinator. But and that plan had failed. So the Bangladesh ke funding debe na. So the challenging thing was the month after Y Combinator. How do you like really raise funding in that environment? So তখন like I approached a lot of investors. But literally my first successful pitch was inside an elevator. আমি 500 startup অফিসে গেছি, গিয়ে ঢুকার দরজা বন্ধ, অফিসে ঢুকতে পারছি না, একজন বার হয়েছে, ওকে ফলো করে আমি লিফটের মধ্যে তাকে বুঝাচ্ছি যে এই সেগুলো আছে, দেখো ইট সাউন্ডস রিয়েলি এক্সাইটিং, আচ্ছা আমাদের একটা উই হ্যাভ এ গেট টুগেদার, ওয়াই ডোন্ট ইউ কাম টু দ্যাট গেট টুগেদার. সো এটাতে আসলাম, হি বট এ $20 টিকিট, মানে ওখানে বসে অন দ্য স্পট হি বট এ $20 টিকিট ফর আস. And there I met like Dave McClure কে বললাম যে মানে basically what happens is that when you're trying to sell Bangladesh, it's like back in the days it was even worse. It's like the only thing that people knew about was George Harrison and flood.
Flood.
These are the two things, right? Like Bangladesh, nothing like koto boro koto none of that. এখন তো আমরা অনেক কথা বলতে বললে একটু হলেও improve করছে, but back in the day it was crazy. So I knew that I had to find like a crazy guy. So and that was Dave McClure. So okay, convince করে first investment raise করি. Y Combinator eventually আমরা ঢুকি 2015 At the time that we went into Y Combinator in 2015, we were actually fairly large. Like we had 100 employees, we were growing, and that interview was like smooth. Like it was a 10 minutes interview. মানে আমাদেরকে 5 minutes just question জিজ্ঞেস করছে. We had all the answer. I took all the graphs like, and within 5 minutes they were like, okay, done. We get a call, you're accepted, right? When we graduated from Y Combinator, we were one of the best performing startups in the class, right? We I think raised one of the highest funding in our batch, etc. So তখন Y Combinator বার করে like the fact that you're in Y Combinator মানে supersedes the fact that you're from Bangladesh. So that was one thing. But funding has been challenging, right? So other than some specific instances, it's just been like really a drag.
So before like just a conversation take jai, like I know that your strategy on fundraising has changed, right, over the last 10 years that Chaldal has been operating as. But right now, if you think about it, local fundraising has come certain ways, and I'm sure, like for example, IDLC Ventures, if I'm not wrong, is one of the
IDLC itself is one of our holders. So basically, if you buy IDLC stock, you actually have exposure to Chaldal. Awesome. In the stock market.
Awesome. But you guys have cracked that complicacy that most people initially had, right? For example, you're registered outside. How does a local VC come on your cap table? Probably it's through a warrant that gives them something at the holdco level as well. But I think, if I'm not wrong, Chaldal was the first startup that kind of cracked it with IDLC.
Yes, the problem was যে আমরা যখন Series A করতে যাই তখন like I had really good numbers actually when we were doing Series A, and I spoke to Andreessen Horowitz, I spoke to Founders Fund, and like no one was like just willing to move on Bangladesh, right? Maybe I did not look wide enough, but I had reached. So at Series A তে গিয়ে আমাদের একটা সমস্যা হলো যে it's one thing to give you like $2-3 million. It's completely different when you're asking for a lot more, right? Actually Series A was 5.2. So, but I guess it's one thing to give you $200,000-$300,000 and 5 million. So the question becomes that who sits in your board seat? তোমার কি governance আছে নাকি না, etc., etc.
Y Combinator, did they want a board seat?
No, Y Combinator never wants a board seat. So ওই জায়গাটায় গিয়ে একটা সমস্যা হলো. So at that point we had to bring in IFC. So we approached IFC, and IFC was like, we need to have a local partner because we think that that's like based on our 50 years of experience, that works out to be actually quite a good thing. So that's how IDLC came in. At that point, basically cracking IDLC, like it was just $1 million investment. Like I could have raised it from somewhere else, but I thought that it was important to diversify the sources of funding, right? For a startup, like you don't want to always depend on foreign investor or local investors or public markets or banks or grants. Like you need to have a diversified strategy. So I thought that so it took quite a bit out of me personally to get that contract going. Like, it took 2 years of my life actually. Not ideal say ek bochhor tarpor next je major local investor আসছিল Mir Group. Because the legal terminologies, বাংলাদেশে কোন ল আছে, আমেরিকান কোন ল আছে, হ্যাঁ, ইনভেস্টর কি চায় সবকিছু রিফ্লেক্ট করতে, it was very difficult.
So what it did was it set a precedent. I think
it created the market, right?
A lot of follow-on investments kind of followed that model.
Yeah, pretty much like most of the startups have followed that model. Startup Bangladesh uses that template, right? So it created the Bangladeshi VC ecosystem. Like, it's like the time, I think, the first person, like, আগে আমাদের বাংলাদেশে তো জমি কিনে বিল্ডিং বানাতো, হ্যাঁ, ওই যে শেয়ার, যে ওনারও কয়েকটা ফ্ল্যাট পাবে, রিয়েল এস্টেট ডেভেলপার কয়েকটা ফ্ল্যাট পাবে, এই কনসেপ্টের কিন্তু ছিল না. This concept came in the 1990s, and I think it was BTI that cracked that concept. And once BTI had cracked it, it led to a real estate boom in Bangladesh. So sometimes that legal instrument, that thinking is missing. So if you crack it, like, it unlocks the ecosystem. So I think that was one thing we did well, and it's probably something that I can be proud of in a few years.
Right. So just going back to some basic questions about Chaldal. So when you're looking at Chaldal, can you describe the perfect profile who uses Chaldal? I know that, for example, my wife is a user who probably fits that profile. Working woman who doesn't have time to go for grocery stores and stuff like that. But if you were to describe the user of Chaldal,
see, I don't like these marketing profile questions at all. I think they should be banned from the marketing books. A profile question is a dinosaur from the era where you did not have information about people, right? Like, you had to know acha 50 to 60 year old. Like, think of how, I don't know, back in the days, FMCG কিভাবে marketing করতো. They could not actually think about an individual, right? They could not think Siam is like this, Rakib is like this. But in today's day and age, you have so much information, what phone he uses, what browser he uses, probably what internet connection he uses, what time he places his order, right? কোন এলাকায় থাকে. The profiles become, I think, a distraction. Like, it's like a hammer in a world that needs finer tools, right? So I don't believe in the profiles. I believe in fulfilling 3 or 4 basic needs, right? So Chaldal is something that can offer 4 things, 4 types of value. Number one is if you look at the average retail store, they probably carry 500 to 600 item. Bangladeshi সকলের এই grocery item, কোনার দোকান কত item লাগতে পারে. But people have wide variety of need. We know that at least 3,000 items are needed, right? So that's one thing. মানে জিনিসটা হলো গিয়ে যে variety in your shopping options, right? So everyone has their own. So that's like, right now, like there is something like beard oil. Like, no one heard about this product like 5 years ago, right? People buy, like, there's a greater demand for, like, I don't know, like avocados and salads and this sort of thing. So as the economy improves, like, you need more and more variety. So our job is to offer you variety. If you want pet food, I don't want you to have to come to Gulshan to buy pet food or go to Katabon to buy pet food. So I can offer you pet food across the country. So that's variety.
So you say that the category drives those retention that you have? The number of categories that you have on the platform?
Yes, the number of categories that we have drives that. But there is also a sweet spot, in the sense that we don't want something that people buy once a year, right? Like, I don't want to sell phones, because at some point what happens is that the number of items that you offer versus the velocity of the item you offer, you have to find like a sweet spot, right? So our warehouses are relatively in highly expensive real estate. Plus, the risk of the item, like, the risk that we are delivering an iPhone with a চুরি হয়ে গেল is higher. So you have to sort of understand the risk reward sort of thing. We want to increase more and more categories over time, but like right now we're focused on the more difficult categories, which is যে আমরা কি মাছ ডেলিভারি করতে পারি. সো আই থিঙ্ক যে মাছ ডেলিভারি করতে পারলে একদিন আইফোনও ডেলিভারি করতে পারবো. That's where we come from. The second thing that we want to focus on is quality. right? Like how do you improve the quality of things? Like, someone wants like a special cut of beef, like, we want to be able to offer that. We have processing centers, etc. Third is price, obviously. Like, we want people who are sensitive about price to come to us. And fourth is obviously the case that you mentioned, your wife's case, that convenience, like, you don't have the time, so you get it. So we focus on these four things. And, every customer has some balance of these things. Like a mom would be like, okay, I want the quality. So you need to tailor the advertisement to that. There might be like a lot of Bangladeshis live abroad. Like you're studying in the UK and then now you're doing a job. Your parents live here. Bashai household help nai. Like, that becomes a thing. So like, that could be actually a very good category. Or you're like I don't know, like middle-aged person, like, but you don't have like a lot of support infrastructure, or you're a dual income family, both of you work, you don't have the time, or you just had a new kid. Like, human life, every human being is unique. So the idea of consumer profiles, I think, is too blunt.
Right. So just talking about the acquisition part, right? And I know 2023 marks like the 10-year anniversary of Chaldal, but starting from the beginning, I'm pretty sure like your acquisition strategy has changed as well. So
acquisition of customers.
For example, এখন যদি বলি, I'm sure like whether they have used Chaldal or not, they've heard about Chaldal, right? But in the initial stages, was it a more of a different strategy where you people had to get into the market, you have to build your brand by ওরকম কিছু, where you had to show the convenience to people? ওই জিনিসটা কি, was it
and অনেকটা আছে, some people got it. So basically, see, the acquisition chart depends on like different customers have different levels of understanding, right? So in the earliest days, you want to capture the guys who have the highest level of understanding, and that at that point, Facebook worked really, really well for us, right? Ekhon basically, as the base expands, right? Like you have to sort of understand how many new customers are there, what their average revenue could be, and you have to be smart about acquisition costs. Especially in this environment where like, funding, etc. is very tight. You have to be very smart about acquisition. Like at the end of the day, word of the mouth is better. So if you can get referrals, etc. So acquisition strategy has varied, but I wouldn't say it's because of how long we have been. It's rather like, how much we're willing to spend on the acquisition. That's the main determinant of that.
Right. And would you say, for example, initially things like Facebook ads and stuff like that, did they have more conversion, or are you hearing more word of mouth? Because I do hear more Chaldal related stuff in people's circles, right? I hear more about that through word of mouth rather than looking at through online ads and stuff like that. I think you've reached a point where that has become very effective in customer acquisition. I see those as very widespread among people as well.
There is always more you can do. I don't think we're particularly good at it. But these days, basically, we know the customer. We know who reacts to what kind of messaging. We can directly like send them an SMS or a push notification or even a call. So we are much better at targeting. And we also have a large customer base. So we can be very smart about how we approach this customer. So that's I mean, that's really it. I mean, at this point, like acquisition actually focus করার থেকে we are more focused on making sure that our base is using it to fullest potential. যে কেউ মাসে 4,000 টাকা যে স্পেন্ড করে সে 8,000 টাকা কিভাবে স্পেন্ড করা যায়. So that's our target right now. Like, double down on your existing customer, double down on the service, etc.
AOV increase করা. Right.
একটা ইন্টারেস্টিং জিনিস, প্যান্ডেমিকের সময় ফর ইনস্টেন্স হচ্ছে ডিজিটাল সার্ভিসেসের ইউজ করার প্রবণতা বা হচ্ছে কমফর্ট লেভেলটা আই থিঙ্ক অনেকটা বেড়েছিল ওই সময়. সো
it's not about comfort, it's about lack of options, right? Like, it's like if I lock you in a room, what option do you have to get food? So I mean, yes, the challenge during pandemic was not demand. I think we actually we did gain a lot, but we were not able to serve all the demand, right? Like in pandemic, I think we could have delivered, we could have gotten like 500,000 orders in a day as well. if we had the capacity to deliver, but our capacity to deliver was like 3,000 orders a day, right? So pandemic shumay jinishta was an exceptional thing, and I don't think the 3,000 customers that we delivered to were necessarily the right customer who would return in the long term, right? There were a lot of customers who were just like ordering and like,
ঠেকায় পড়ে যায়,
ঠেকায়
এখনো
পড়ে।
লাগে।
We should have probably increased the delivery charge to 10,000 taka and seen what happened. Then like, that would have probably funded us for the year. But that would have created a really bad reputation during the pandemic.
All right. So
in terms of product market fit, like
there's this interesting thing that I want, and this is what how I view it, right? So for example, regarding product market fit, I think Bangladesh especially, early signs of product market fit is always there. The market is so fragmented where even bringing a small convenience or a small innovation will give you a lot of early signals on you have product market fit and you have this something. Is it necessarily scalable? Not necessarily. It is scalable now. You get like a small traction, pore beshi traction pawa jacche na and stuff like that. But when talking to other founders, other startups, I love hearing the story of how they kind of came to the realization that I think I have cracked product market fit. I think I have a product that is convenient and people are willing to pay for it. Is there any, during your journey, did you ever feel that I am finally a model tate aschi, business model aschi and stuff like that?
So you see, when you're building a software business, usually your limitation is how many servers you can put in, right? So for Chaldal, the challenge has always been to scale the demand and the ability to serve at the same time, right? So it's like, you have to do a dance, right? Like right now you have excess capacity, you're getting more demand, but abar jodi beshi demand hoye jay, service kharap hoye jabe, so customers will fall back. So that has been the challenge. Like we know that there are sliders where we can change to double our demand, right? But I don't know if we'll be able to serve it. So that's why it's a very operationally heavy business. That is why it has been a very difficult challenge to crack, not just in Bangladesh, but worldwide, like grocery delivery. Like you just can't scale the system like you can scale software. Which is where, your true innovation comes in. So I do feel that, we get better at it every day. There are certain pieces of software that we're waiting for, but we just get better at it. Like, it's sort of like you automatically need to decide, kalke etota capacity lagbe, kalke etogulo tomato kinbo. This is how we sell these tomatoes, right? And you go from that. Like people will need food. Who wants to go out and buy, right? This is no brainer, right? If you offer them a good price on soybean oil, they will buy all the soybean oil from you. Product market fit has not been really a challenge. The challenge has been to balance it with the operational scalability.
Right. So for example, at ShopUp as well, I think what we realize and what we usually double down on is that sometimes it's not a one single idea that is kind of sets you apart, right? For example, let's say AI or what any idea. It's a single idea that you kind of sets them apart from the rest. But it's also a series of small things that you do that sets you apart. For example, you are seeing a delivery being done, but there are so many small things on the ground that needs to happen for that delivery to be done on time, for the procurement, and having those things and making sure that they run smoothly as you scale. I think that is also as important as like a very big innovation, technologically saying, that comes to play. Right?
See, no one said it's going to be easy. And the reason why it was not done before is because it's probably a hard problem that we all are dealing with. So all of these small details, like let's say, how do you deal with a product customer return, right? How do you deal with the fact that someone has said, "Amar to milk noshto chilo." When you're like selling one milk, it doesn't really matter. But we're selling like literally thousands of packets of milk. We have to understand what percentage of this is there. And then we have to understand the কোন part of the supply chain missing ঝামেলা হয়েছে. So এই জিনিসগুলো প্রত্যেকটা প্রোডাক্টের জন্য এক একটা একটা analysis আছে that's just one part of it. Then like let's say someone says যে like a delivery person goes there and there is someone not at their home. How do you deal with that interaction? সে কি বলতে পারে? সে কি বলতেছে আমি 10 মিনিট পরে আসতেছি, সে কি বলতেছে আপনি পরে নিব, পরে নিলে কি হবে, প্রোডাক্টগুলো কোথায় রাখবো? So it those sort of details sets you apart. And yes, there are countless details. Like let's say just today I was just discussing one thing যে আচ্ছা প্রতিদিন আমি দেখি যে আমাদের প্রায় 50-60 কেজি vegetable থেকে যায়. Why don't we like show an offer on our app, like if for someone ordering at 6 p.m. they just get 3 kg tomato at 3 taka, right? That will increase customer happiness, and we will not waste these tomatoes, right? So it's like little details like that. Like there are just so many of them. And then there is the implementation. The detail to chinta kora easy, but implement kora, protected software implement kora, process implement kora, that's what takes time.
Right. And ওটা করতে যে everything breaks and then you rebuild again and then it breaks.
Yes, everything breaks, you get wiser and like একটা ছোট জিনিস চেঞ্জ করতে গিয়ে because the systems get so complex. Those are challenges. So but you get smarter about how you do things.
Sounds a lot of fun. Which part do you enjoy the most? Like solving all these intricate issues that come up, and then you have to think on your feet, come up with an interesting solution and apply it. It's an adventure every day, I'm sure. So which part of it do you...
I enjoy the system design part of it. I truly enjoy the system design part of it. The part that I don't enjoy is fundraising. That's the part that I don't enjoy. I mean, I really enjoy the system design, but what I've realized is that there's a limit to how fast I can design systems. So now what I'm trying to figure is how to make the organization design systems. So that's also a different level of system design. But I enjoy the system design part like very much.
Interesting. You mentioned that you don't like the fundraising beta, and you also were saying it's always better to have a diversified portfolio where you're raising বাইরে থেকে, you also have local investors. And Sami bhai came to our thing a couple of weeks ago, and গল্প করতে উনি বলতেছিল যে an interesting thing that they're doing is they're trying to get startups help so that they can get listed on the public, so they can raise public funds. So that's I thought that was really interesting. Do you think from Chaldal's perspective that would be something interesting, or you would?
Yeah, I mean, we have already expressed our interest to the SEC. We have had several conversations at the SEC. We are keenly exploring this. And I think...
Do you see progress?
I do see progress. I see. Well, at least I'm seeing response. And I think SEC has a very positive take on this. They want to do it. The problem is that Bangladesh, we are very fearful about like the implications of our actions. Like, to the extent that we often forget if it works, what can happen. We have been preparing internally to go with something like that.
It's only a matter of time before it happens, right?
It has to happen.
It has to happen.
It's a no-brainer. It has to happen. Otherwise, like investors will not get access to good investments, right? The thing is that what most people don't realize is that there are businesses develop as generations, right? Like, generation like let's say আজ থেকে 100 বছর আগে, how do you do business? Like, you'd be doing everything on cash basis. কিছু জিনিস বিক্রি হলো, cash নিলা, দিয়ে দিল. Then the second generation of business which managed to scale, but that business doesn't scale because, you cannot keep track of it. The second generation of business that scale was like, যে হাতে কলমে বই লিখে এক্সেট্রা, আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে আমরা রেকর্ড কিপিং করতেছি, রেকর্ড কিপিং এর সাথে we're keeping the records, we are distributing, delegating some of the responsibilities, etc. Third generation holo Excel based businesses, right? Like, so every generation of businesses is like has 10x more potential. And in our generation, it's like you're even outsourcing the decision making to the computers, right? So this is going to create massive businesses that has not existed in Bangladesh before, right? So it's like ওই জিনিসটা যদি মানুষকে এক্সপোজার না দেওয়া যায়, how will they get ROI? You cannot get ROI by like, I don't know, doing another like small venture because there's so much competition for it. You get ROI by doing the larger things.
Right. If you are to, let's say, list in the Bangladesh Stock Exchange and stuff like that, would that change your exit strategy? For example, would you still require or would you still want to list abroad to give your at least the foreign investors exit, or will they be able to? I'm just thinking of
here. At the end of the day, it is our responsibility to make sure that all of our investors have liquidity.
Right.
And Bangladesh is just one stepping stone.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Telenor, Telenor has Grameenphone listed in Bangladesh and Telenor listed in Norway or wherever, right? The same thing can happen for Chaldal. Chaldal Inc. lists in the US, Chaldal Limited lists in Bangladesh, Chaldal Thailand lists in Thailand, right? So that's what I think is the ultimate vision, right? At the end of the day, we want people to be able to invest in Chaldal easily and take out their money when they are not feeling confident or something like that. So that's a responsibility that we have. So, I mean, the exit strategy, I mean, I don't really see the business from exit strategy perspective. I see it as like something that needs to sustain. And, investors are partners in that journey. And, we need to make sure that, investors also get what they want, right? So, yeah.
Right.
Cool. And I think you moved to the High Tech Park office. So I was wondering, like, it must have been a logistical challenge, like convincing people to also move.
No. We just hired there.
Okay.
We thought যে ঢাকার মধ্যে তো বিভিন্ন জেলা শহর থেকে মানুষজন আসতেছে, বাপমার থেকে দূরে থাকতেছে, ট্রাফিকের মধ্যে করে অফিসে আসতেছে, হ্যাঁ, এত ঝামেলা করে ট্যালেন্টদেরকে এরকম অ্যাবিউজ করে তো ব্রেন পাওয়ার পাওয়া যাবে না, হ্যাঁ. So we went to Jashore. We saw that we actually moved quite a while ago, 2019. So we have about 700 people in that offices. We have, I think, 28,000 square feet office space. So our entire back office is over there. Now, yes, it is challenging for me to move there. I mean, I would really like to spend a lot more time at there. The problem is, a lot of the government infrastructure is here. A lot of the ecosystem is here. So some people have to be here. Like all the companies that we deal with are here. So some people have to be in Dhaka. But I really like Jashore Mode, I feel that we get really, really great talent who have a much better quality of life. Yeah. So yeah.
And it's not difficult for them to say, because the operations of actual deliveries are happening here, is there any challenge for them
to... কি challenge হবে? মানে it's like, does Unilever have a challenge running Unilever Bangladesh from the UK? It doesn't. Like, it's just structures.
Right. So even like talking about a little bit about competition, right? And we've seen like a lot of inspired companies come up with the same model and stuff like that. Some of them are no longer in the market and stuff like that. And I've seen like two kinds of founders, right? When it comes to competition, people who obsess about what the other competitors are doing. And then there's the other extreme where they just put on blinders and have like a single vision. I don't care what anybody else is doing. This is what I need to do to go to that point. How do you deal with, or how do you view competition over here? I know it's still such a small market that you need.
I think like, I mean, this is a game where you're competing against yourself, right? Like you're trying to be a better version of the product that you had created. It's not you can get some inspiration. Maybe someone came up with some idea. But, if you're already miles ahead of them, it's very unlikely that they will come up with some idea that you don't. It would be unwise to not know what they're doing and copy that. But that should not deter you. At the end of the day, if you're going to provide value to people, it's going to come from your understanding of the market, your understanding of the customer. It's not going to come from your understanding of the competitor's background or backing. That's how I think about it. And I think, yes, absolutely right, Jay. I actually believe, Jay, worrying too much about your competitor destroys your brain power. Because you have a certain amount of RAM. And, if you're waking up every day thinking about, Jay, what is going on there, you're not going to be able to. And these are businesses which are like really difficult, right? Like we're in this business, like, that nobody wants to get in, like, that easy. It's not like something acha banailam. It's not a solved problem, right? It's not like, oh, it has worked over here, and it's an unsolved problem. So you just keep at it, right?
True. Do you think that may change once the problem is solved and there are established competitors and you're also...
I mean, the question for you is that how many competitors of Windows are there, right? Why is no one starting a startup to compete with Windows? It's just because, like, the chance of that happening, like, that copy, that's the beauty of these software companies. No one thinks about competing head on with Google, right? Like on search. It's just the nature of software that it ends up building such a beautiful thing that if to start from ground zero, like, it doesn't make any sense.
Very difficult to catch up.
Yeah.
So 2023 has been a pretty difficult year in terms of like post-COVID recovery, the wars, everything. So how much did that impact your business in terms?
It has impacted this a lot. I think 2023 has been one of the worst years, I think, like since we started. Like just keeping up morale, like things prices going up. Our suppliers are getting squeezed because LC margin. I think there's a lot of uncertainty at the macro level that is just like hurting us really bad. And for us, even though we have said we want alternative ways of funding, and we have created alternative ways of funding, the fact of the matter is 70% of our funding has been from foreign sources, and for a growing company, when that cuts off, that's super challenging. So 2023, I hope with the elections things will get clearer. But on the positive side, I think like 5 years down, we will look at it and we will say that 2023 changed our trajectory. That's when we decided to like tighten all the nuts and really make the machine work, right? So it has given us a mindset where, like, we just have to like make it work. Like it just needs to work and scale and work and scale.
So it's, for example, like in our case as well, right? The last few years, it has enabled us to double down on specific things instead of, let's say, experimenting a lot. And that has resulted in creating more value in those specific things, right? And I think going forward, we will kind of look back and think, I think what enabled us to double down on this category was still a good thing, instead of, let's say, doing multiple categories and stuff like that, where we were not good at. We doubled down on the things that we were good at. And this was due to our last constraints that we had, right? And I think it's going to pay off in the long run. And obviously, startups like Chaldal who go through this journey come out much stronger, I think.
See, I was reading an article, 3,200 startups in the US have shut down. Companies in India like Byju's, etc., like have accepted 80%, 90% valuation. Looking at our ecosystem, like, I think we have been way more resilient.
Absolutely.
And that's probably a function of the fact that, we're just used to like cockroach mode. So I think this 2023 will, like, 2024 and onwards, I think the ecosystem will, as a ratio of like global like venture capital, I think we will do much better because we have more experienced founders, people who can talk, right? Mm-hmm. So just if you think that whether we have gained, like Bangladesh relatively has gained compared to USA or India or China in 2023.
On the other hand, like we do also have like more early stage startups. I think they will need to kind of come to the late stage startup session as well. And most of the affected companies in US and India were like more like a little bit more late stage startups as well. But we really need more startups to graduate to Series A, B, and beyond like that as well.
Hey, ওইটা তো দরকার আছে. I mean, we need the government to step in for sure. I think $100 million, which the fund of fund is not going to be enough. I think we need to tap into the banking sector. I don't mind saying it because kono bank amake loan deয় na. But I think the banking sector in Bangladesh lacks in innovation, lacks in initiative, and Someone just needs to disrupt it. Like they are just sitting on capital and putting it on the same old ideas that they have. হাজার হাজার রাইস মিল বানাচ্ছে যেখানে দেশের ক্যাপাসিটির এত দরকার নাই. They are wasting capital. আর স্টার্টআপদেরকে বলে যে like you guys can't pay back, right? Like your rice mills won't pay back because you've built too many of them. So the banking sector either needs to step up, or we need to have other things that take their place.
Right. And you have do you talk about, like, for example, how many customers that you have? Is Chaldal profitable right now, or what the future holds?
No, we are not profitable. We are not profitable simply for the reason that we like to keep our accounting like very straightforward, right? We don't capitalize our software expenses. Like when you're building a startup, you're doing a lot of experiments. Like that's how you make it. Our certain warehouses are profitable. But this year we are investing heavily on building out a wallet. So that is expensed, right? Like let's say the 7 or 8 crore taka we'll spend on building out a wallet, or we're spending on building out a wallet, that is expensed. So that comes as not profitable. But we're very close to it. I think 2023 has taught us that it has to make even like ramen profitability ASAP. So I think like by middle of this year, we probably will be.
Do you see investors like looking at different metrics now than when you first started?
Most of them are too late to the party, right? When they were supposed to follow the sales number, when they were supposed to follow the profitability number, they decided that sales is the way to go, and now they're supposed to follow some other metrics, and they're like profit. So I think investors have this তাদের সফটওয়্যার আপডেট হতে একটু বেশি সময় লাগে. their software আপডেট হতে বেশি সময় লাগে. Like at this point it's very clear which are the businesses with positive unit economics. It's very evident, right? And just focusing on the bottom line doesn't make sense. Although having said that, I think if you're growing 50 to 100% a year, or not greater than 50% a year, and your net income is less than 3 or 4%, minus 3 or 4%, I think it will be a very attractive investment candidate. The problem is that I think nobody has grown like 50% like in the past year, simply because it's been such a challenging environment. Like it's yes, you can grow in certain ways, but it's been a very difficult environment to grow in. Right. You guys probably have grown 50%.
So we kind of have grown because I think the categories we work with and the infrastructure we have built, I think those were like essentials, right? Those were necessities, and we kind of doubled down on those exact things that we were good at, right? And it helped that we monetized support as well, like logistics and financing and stuff like that. I think building a infrastructure has helped us sustain through this. I think if we were doing just sourcing, it would have been a bit more struggle. I think building that infrastructure.
I think there are certain things that have grown. Like for example, I know the Bragg Bank has really grown in this market, right? Where other banks were shrinking. It's like infrastructure help correct,
right?
To attract the growth.
And what you mentioned, right? Like for example, the banking sector would not go directly into financing, not just us, but even the players or stakeholders in our supply chain, right? And that's what we have been trying to solve as well. How can an institution that has operated traditionally কিভাবে এটা করতে পারে? And for that we had to first get foreign debt as well, venture debt, build model, show locally that look, this works. You can have confidence on these. I think hopefully more banks will come around into financing more non-traditional businesses, but I think you can only hope that happens as well.
And Chaldal, of course, you're completing 10 years this year. So how have you seen the industry evolving? What are the good things that you're excited about?
I mean, the most positive thing is that actually today's youth thinks about doing startups. I think that's a very positive change. But now the Bangladeshi like let's say the smartest kids in Bangladesh, their dream is to go abroad, and then they don't know anything,
right.
and probably work at a bank as a teller. That's a really sad dream, right? Like, you have tellers are going to get automated in the next 10 years. They have been getting automated. So those kind of jobs will not exist. But a lot of Bangladeshis take up those kind of jobs that will get obsolete, right? Or really menial jobs. They are not becoming usually in the core, like decision making sort of things. But they still want to leave the country, right? So I think that change there is that change among a few of the youth who actually see that, and I think there is.
And you can see them coming back as well in some cases.
We are seeing them coming back as well, right? Because it's somewhere it's like better to rule the hell than to serve the heavens.
Right. So yeah, I think the founders are definitely smarter right now. I think there's a lot of when you started, and a lot of others early stage startups, they didn't have a lot of precedence to go on. I remember when I first came across the term of a safe investment, I had to learn what it was. I had to understand and do research before understanding it completely. But now you have different institutions teaching what a safe is. There are precedences. There are things that has already happened and stuff like that. I think a lot of founders right now are more smarter. They have access to a lot more knowledge thanks to people like Waseem Bhai as well. And I think that's helping the overall ecosystem.
It's not just founders also, early employees also matter a lot, right? Like, if you're in the first 200 employees in a startup, those are critical people, right? You got to do more interesting things. I think also the idea of joining an MNC, I'm seeing cracks in that as well, right? So we're able to attract the smarter graduates away from the traditional places. Right. So yeah,
I think what will help more is more cases of ESOP, right? So for example,
yes, ESOP in cash kora lagbe. Bangladesh, people, we need cases where people make 30 lakh taka because some startup went public.
And that's what helped India, where these cases where people suddenly made money through ESOPs and they're very rich and it's actually a fruitful career rather than an MNC. Yeah. That has to happen here as well. And I think most of the, for example, when people ask me, and this is for example, when they want to understand, should I join a startup or not, right? And I keep giving them the same advice that how you should select where you want to work in which startup you want to work is that you should look at it as an investor. If you think that startup is going to do well, you should go and work there. Because if you do get ESOP in there, in that particular startup, that's going to be worth a lot of value when that startup actually eventually does well as well. So if you're looking at a startup and you have an opportunity to work there, think of it as an investment. You're investing in the startup. Would you invest in that startup?
But it's not just money, right? Startups, it's no competition. You go to an MNC, you have a very defined role and there are processes and you must stick within that boundary and do that particular role well. But at a startup, there are so many varied challenges. You get to learn so much. You get to take on interesting projects and stuff that you believe can help you grow. And we can actually, there's so much more opportunities for you to act like an owner and actually, become so much bigger than you thought you could be. So we opportunity will, I think.
Yeah, I think the world is getting faster, right? Test cricket ekhon ar ke dekhe. So MNCs are test cricket. We are in the TikTok age. So basically the refresh rate has increased. So you have to know, where you're betting your career. Even what skills you're picking up and where you're likely to pick up those skills. See the people around you, and ask, talk to them, right? I think in 10 years time, a lot of the skills around I'm sundor kore ekta print out nite parlam and it's formatted well. I mean, I don't think that's going to be valuable. Even speaking good English is no longer valuable thanks to ChatGPT, right? So the skills are going to be different. The skill that we want right now is ke bhalo TikTok banaite pare. Because that's you. At the end of the day, you're going for attention. So in startups, you get to experiment with these kind of things.
And what's next for Chaldal? Like, what does that?
What's next for Chaldal? Well, সবাইকে খুশি করতে হবে. So we need to make sure that our suppliers are happy, our customers are happy, our investors are happy, our employees are happy. So we keep doing things. Again, like I feel that this is such a great time to experiment, and I feel like a kid in a China shop. But yeah, I mean, we are going to. I mean, the strategy that we embarked on like 10 years ago, we are sticking to that path. I mean, we were not wrong when we said e-commerce is like electricity. So we will increase categories. We will get into payments. We will try to increase average order value of customers. That's. I mean, we're going to remain a B2C mostly. So yeah.
So if anyone watches this and the founders themselves finds this useful and more people get inspired by Waseem Bhai's story, I think that just helps the overall ecosystem better, right? And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your views on your journey as well as and where you see Chaldal in the future as well. So thanks for joining us, Waseem Bhai.
Thank you for having me here. And yeah,
Right.
Great.
Coffee টা আসছিল?